In this time of panic, it's always fun to speculate on what's to come next. And if you haven't had a conversation about how the government is going to use these times to implement a dictatorship, then you need some more paranoia in your life. To ensure you have the best paranoid conversations possible, I am going to review the Emergencies Act to find out exactly what the Canadian government can and can't do. First and foremost, the Emergencies Act is available on the Government of Canada website and is also downloadable as a PDF, so don't take my word on any of this, because I might be a shape-shifting lizard person who will soon overthrow you filthy humans. Any minute now. World domination aside, let's check out the Emergencies Act. And before I get started, just to get those conspiracy juices flowing, the Act was last amended on July 2nd, 2003, but it has been reviewed and declared up to date on March 19th, 2020. Interesting. Additionally, when I first downloaded the PDF, the review date was March 5th, so it is frequently being reviewed as of late. Before we figure out what the government can do, let's see what it can't do. Well, for starters, the Act can only be enacted if the following conditions are met. 1. The situation must endanger Canadian lives, and the danger must exceed the capacity of the province. Check. 2. The situation must compromise the sovereignty of Canada. Check. So with conditions met, the Act can be enacted. But we should take note of one important limitation of the Act. Citizens cannot be detained based on race, ethnicity, and all that other fun stuff. Of course, you can be detained based on viral status, so don't start feeling too safe. In Canada, we have 4 types of emergencies. 1. Public welfare emergency. 2. Public order emergency. 3. International emergency. 4. War emergency. For the brevity of this video, I will focus on the emergencies that are most relevant at this time, that being the public welfare emergency and the public order emergency. First, a public welfare emergency. Do we have a public welfare emergency? Among other things, a public welfare emergency requires that the emergency be caused by a real or imminent disease in human beings. Well, this is awkward. What does this mean? The government can perform the following actions. Some of these actions may look familiar since they have already been implemented, such as A. Managing travel. F. Making emergency payments to citizens. G. Creating emergency shelters. J. Fines. What is important to note is that these fines can go up to $5,000 and 5 years in prison. And what have we yet to see? B. The detainment of individuals or personal property. For the sake of the safety of the individuals or personal property, of course. C. The requisition of property. D. The demand of people to work for the government and be compensated based on what the government deems reasonable. E. The regulation of goods, services, and resources. This isn't terrifying at all. How about we move on to a public order emergency? Do we have a public order emergency? This is a little more difficult to show, but we need to determine whether we have an emergency that arises from threats to the security of Canada and is so serious as to be a national emergency. For this, I would consider that the violation of a quarantine could bring a threat to the security measures that have been enacted, and this situation is already at the level of national emergency, so the conditions could be considered to have been met. So when we look at the power this grants to the government, we have the following. For points B, D, and E, these are largely covered by the public welfare emergency. The new fancy powers the government gets are the following. A. Prohibiting you from doing anything. C. assuming control of all public services. On the bright side, there are restrictions. On the not so bright side, the restrictions are that the federal government defers to the provincial government, which generally listens to the federal government. That's rough. Anyways, that's all I was looking to point out in this video. There are still international emergencies, which require another country and some intimidation and/or coercion. And war emergencies that requires, well, war. Ideally, I will never have to talk about these emergencies, but sometimes the world can be a little chaotic. Last but not least, feel free to comment with any feedback or ideas for other videos. Like, share, and subscribe, and have yourself an enjoyable quarantine.